People with dysfunctional families, what tore everyone apart? One day my younger sister Angela noticed some of her underwear was missing. She went looking for them and found the missing items in my brother's room. However, they were wet and slimy. She immediately told our parents and their reaction was quite severe. That day my 15-year-old brother Trey was hanging out in the basement playing Xbox with his friends Tommy, Jake, and Ethan. Tommy and Jake are good kids, but I've never really liked Ethan. He was always looking for attention, which was annoying. My parents in their infinite wisdom decided to confront my brother about this in front of his friends. This was the biggest mistake of their life. A lot of hurtful things were said. Apparently. Our mom said I knew you were weird, but not this weird. My dad added I raised a predator. Hey Tommy, did you know you were friends with a disgusting predator? In the end his friends left and my parents asked me to pick him up and let him stay with me for a couple of days. When I picked him up, he didn't utter a word and sat in silence. Trey spent most of his time in the room he was staying in. At my place, he wasn't going to school. He would only come out for dinner, skipping breakfast and lunch. When I walked by his room, I could just hear him sobbing. I've never seen him cry before. Usually when he's upset he just has a stoic expression. What was said must have deeply hurt him. At the end of the week, our parents called and wanted to talk to him, so they came over to my place. I tried to engage him in conversation before their arrival, but he ignored me. When our parents arrived, they apologized to him. Over the week they had noticed more of my sister's clothes in his room. Until one day my dad caught the dog with my sister's clothes. But by this time the damage had already been done. That little turd Ethan had gone around telling everyone about what a creep Trey was, and that girl should be careful around him at a high school. Once a rumor becomes prevalent enough, it becomes fact. And so now Trey's reputation was destroyed. I didn't blame him for not wanting to go to school. My brother simply said okay. My parents then told him that he was now allowed to come back home. That's when I lost it. There's no way he's going back with you. What you did to him was inexcusable. You embarrassed your son in front of his friends and kicked him out of your house all over, something he didn't even do. I then turned to Trey and asked him, do you want to go with them? You are more than welcome to stay with me, Trey. His face was stoic, but I could see his eyes were watering up. He just shook his head. I want to stay for a bit. My parents were slightly frustrated, but they didn't want to force him to do anything, so he stayed with me. Over the next few days it became clear that something was wrong with Trey and his depression was getting worse. He stopped even eating dinner with me and would just come down and take the food to his room. Every time he left his room he was all covered up wearing a sweatshirt. I started to get really worried. I had seen this pattern before. My best friend in high school had taken her own life and it started out like this. The third day I saw him come down in a sweatshirt even though I had the heat turned up. I stopped him. Trey, let me see your arms. His eyes snapped up at me and it was clear what I had said had struck a nerve. Right then I knew my suspicions were right. My heart plummeted, my throat got all heavy and my eyes started to tear up. He shook his head. Trey, you have to let me see. It's okay, Trey. While his face was still expressionless, tears were starting to roll down his face. He slowly started to roll up his sleeve with both his hands shaking. When I saw his forearm, all I could do was cover my mouth. The tears started coming down my face at that point too. He had been hurting himself. I did the only thing I could think to do. I just went over and hugged him and told him I loved him. You can't do that, Trey. You just can't. Between sobs, he told me. They all think I'm a monster. Sarah. My life is over. It's worthless. My poor baby brother. It wasn't his fault and he had done nothing wrong, but he was in so much pain and it all could have been avoided if my parents had just used their brains and thought about the situation before jumping to conclusions. I took him to get treatment at the hospital and he was there for a while. I went to see him every day. He didn't want to see my parents at that time, so the doctors wouldn't let them in. I couldn't even look at them because I was so mad. He was making progress, but slowly. But then a miracle happened. Trey's friends, Tommy and Jake, reached out to me to ask if they could come and see Trey. I was a bit concerned that Trey would be afraid, but he actually agreed to see them when they saw him. There were lots of tears and hugs, but I will never forget this one moment. Trey had said he was surprised they had come to see them. Tommy put his hand right on Trey's shoulder and replied, "Dude, of course we came to see you. You're our friend. I don't care what Ethan or anyone else says. We know you're not some monster. We will always be there for you, just like you would for us." Tommy was such a little sweetheart. I had to leave the room to compose myself. That was a real turning point for Trey. In a few days, he was good enough to be released. The doctors felt it would be best for him to stay with me for the time being. Tommy and Jake come over to see him all the time, and he's actually been acting like his usual self. He still has to go to therapy and he might not ever fully heal, but it feels like I have my brother back. Tomorrow is the first day he's going to go back to school. As for my parents, I really don't talk to them other than to text them updates on how he's doing. It's going to take a long time for me to forgive them.
Sister's POV. My stanky half-breed sister is stealing my father away from me. For the love of God, I think I might be Mary, because this is literally what is happening with myself and my sister, Lucy. When our brother said that someone on Am I the A-hole was posting something that was eerily similar to the fight going on, I thought he was joking, but obviously he is not. Hey all, I am Mary, the aforementioned half-sister. I even resurrected my old account just to comment here. Lucy, stop blasting family problems on the internet. You've already taken this to Facebook and you're texting all of mom's family. You need to stop. You aren't even actually engaged to Hunter yet, you've only been together for a few months. You know Seth and I have been together for 7 years. Seriously, you've always been irrational, but this is absolutely ridiculous. You need to take this post down and stop telling a half-skewed version of facts. My sister has always done this. I'm so sorry she's brought you all into it. I'm sorry. Lucy. Comma get help. Love you. She's leaving out so much. Basically, my dad did not just die. I was his next of kin and had to order life support turned off because at the end of his life he neglected to make a will or a DNR or anything stating his wishes, so at 20 years old I essentially had to unalive my father and I went through a severe mental breakdown afterward. Lucy's father, my stepdad, who I've never referred to by his first name but as Pa, was instrumental in helping me heal and move on from my dad's death. If it hadn't been for him being a father to me I might not be here today. He and I talk at least 3 times a week, we also share several online game teams with each other, and we have lunch at least 4 times a month and just catch up. Hereafter known as Lucy, has always been jealous of me because I got the best of both worlds being a 50-50 kid. My dad had more money than our mom and Pa because he had 1 child, so my lifestyle was vastly different than hers. I tried my best to never flaunt it, but little kids make mistakes in learning. Lucy also has a habit of saying she's in these deep relationships when she isn't. I have been incredibly lucky in my love life. I met my fiancé, Seth, when we were in our early 20s and we just fell for each other. We were talking marriage within the first year but held off until we were more mature, older, and wiser. Ever since then Lucy has dated men and acted like they were her soulmates. In truth, she basically stalks these poor guys and goes full-on overly attached girlfriend until they break up with her, and she spends the next decade talking smack about them when she is the problem in every relationship. She's been dating a guy for a few months and then Seth and I officially announce our engagement and suddenly she and this boy are engaged and in love and she's finally found the one person to make her happy forever. And, she didn't ask me not to have Pa walk me down the aisle, she ordered me not to. It was never a request out of sisterly love. She sent me a curse and insult-laden text message demanding that I have someone else walk me down the aisle or I'd be sorry, whatever that means. Pa isn't just disappointed, he and Mom aren't speaking to her right now because after I told them about Lucy's latest meltdown, Pa called her and Lucy went off on him. Oh, and Lucy also told me that if I wanted Dad to walk me down the aisle then I should consider investing in a shovel or a backhoe and hoping the human decay process isn't too far along. Yep. Am I the a-hole for not caring if my husband cheated on me? I have a very strong opinion that if my significant other wants to cheat, I won't stop them. If they need to be stopped, they're not worth my love. I deeply believe I deserve someone who 100% willingly wants to be with me and wouldn't fall for temptation. Let's say it falls under my responsibility to try and stop them if I knew they're going to cheat, but what about if I didn't know? I'm married. We have been together for 4 years and married for 6 months. We just moved to a new apartment and little by little we have been renovating it. We're both crafty and we want to create our dream home. We became friends with our neighbors. Also a couple. The woman is very beautiful and bubbly and I got along very well with her. She said she envied us renovating since her husband doesn't really like these things and refuses to give her money to start her own projects. She's a stay-at-home mom. I don't know about her situation with her husband, but the closer we got to them, the more I sense that he's very careful with money. I get what she means, although I don't think he is financially abusive. Both my husband and I work. My husband works a lot from home. I have noticed that my neighbor is getting more and more friendly with my husband, instead of how it started as a friendship with me. She is very flirty and she seems to have more and more in common with my husband, especially the things I don't really like hiking, but even the smallest things like food or sweets. She has so much in common with him, as she has put it many times. Since she's a stay-at-home mom, she started making my husband his favorite food and my husband has said on many occasions how nice it is that she cooks. Twice I came home and she's in there with my husband, helping him with the renovations or has just brought him lunch. My husband doesn't seem bothered at all, so it makes me think nothing is happening between them, yet. I was telling this to my mom and she got so angry at my indifference. She said that I should ban my neighbor from being around my husband and tell him not to talk to her again. I told her that I wanted a husband who doesn't want to cheat. There are 4 billion women out there and I can't stop him from seeing all of them. He's the only one who can decide if his marriage is worth it. My mom called me deranged and she is very upset with me. I don't know what to do. I have made my opinion clear to my husband that I didn't appreciate our neighbor hanging around with him and I even started to cook more at home. Other than that, I don't plan on having a contest with women to win my husband. I always believe if they can take him, they can keep him. My heart is full of love for him and I can't even imagine myself cheating on him even if I was in a room full of handsome men. I just want the same in return. He hasn't done anything yet, but he has texted with her a few times. Nothing flirty, but they have texted. I hate it, but I don't know. My mom said I'm enabling this just to see if he cheats and then discard him, but all I wish is that he chooses me. Update 2, am I the a-hole for not caring if my husband cheated on me? It's Sunday morning and I'm back home. My husband is staying with his parents. Yesterday he showed up at my sister's, puppy-eyed and all, with takeouts from my favorite restaurant, flowers, chocolate and ice cream. He started apologizing and saying that he loved me and that he would never hurt me. I asked him to start being honest with me, if he had feelings for her and if they'd done something. He swore nothing happened and that he doesn't have feelings towards her. I told him that he wasn't honest because why would he let her in my home, knowing how much it would hurt me? If he had no feelings for her, why risk your marriage? He couldn't answer that more than that he didn't think it was bad since he was secure in his feelings and in our marriage. He then admitted that he liked the attention. So he knew before she admitted it that she liked him? He gave me his phone and all his texts and told me to see how he never once flirted or made any advances. I don't know. I was very sad reading and hearing all this. I told him that they disrespected me. Her last text to him is that she loved him and she would make him happier that I ever could. There were also messages with mean things about me to him, and instead of confronting her he ignored her or laughed it off. When I asked him about it he apologized and said she was obviously jealous, so I didn't want to engage. I told him that I wanted separation because I didn't trust him anymore. He begged me not to. Then he said that I should at least come back to my home and he would live with his parents. He also asked if I could promise him not to start divorce yet and just be separated for a while so we could go to couples counseling. He said that he messed up very badly and wants me to give him time to make it right again and not just divorce him yet. I moved back home this morning and he was here. We had breakfast and he left for his parents. I didn't want him to kiss me. He will be coming home when he needs to work in the office and probably if we start therapy. Update 2. Am I the a-hole for not caring if my husband cheated on me? It's Sunday morning and I'm back home.
Am I the a-hole for leaving my ex homeless? My ex and I are 29 years old and had been dating since we were in high school. We were in the midst of planning our wedding up until 2 weeks ago when I found out she was having an affair. One day when my ex was out I noticed her dad had been spamming her with messages that showed up on her Apple Watch. I got curious wondering if something might have been wrong, so I decided to check the messages, and that's when I realized it wasn't her dad. The messages were full of some guy expressing how excited he was to hook up with her later that night. She had named the guy she was cheating on me with dad on her watch in order to hide suspicion, and he had just blown her cover with his excitement. Before she got home I decided to hide the watch, and when she got back she began searching for it, asking me if I'd seen it, to which I responded cluelessly, telling her I hadn't seen it all day and assumed she took it with her. I then purposely started becoming distant and she noticed. She started panicking, texting her best friend, telling her all about how she lost her watch and how I've been acting distant. She was worried I might have found out about her affair. Her best friend had the decency to message me later on in the day, warning me that my ex was having an affair and that she'd be confessing to me in a few weeks. I told her that I already knew because I had her watch and I was watching the messages roll in. I also told her that I would be getting my revenge by the end of the month. Her friend said if I needed someone to lean on, she was always there and that she'd be willing to help me execute my revenge. A few weeks went by and our apartment lease was finally up, so I started packing everything. I also took all my money from our shared account. I woke up early the next day to throw all my stuff in my car and waited for her to get home so she could confess about her affair. When she did I nodded and left without saying a word. As she was chasing after me asking where I was going, I said nothing and hopped into my car getting ready to drive myself over to my brother's for the night. I woke up today to multiple messages and voicemails about why rent wasn't paid and why there was someone telling her she needed to leave. She had also decided to message my family, telling them all that she's homeless because of me and called me an a-hole. Nearly all my siblings and father agreed that she deserved what I did except for my sister and my mother. They also called me an a-hole for leaving her stranded and for taking half the money out of the account, but the only thing I took was the money I made. They said I should have tried to work things, and my mother even messaged me privately telling me that my fiancée was starting to have thoughts of ending her life, and that if I didn't take her back then she was going to disown me and cut me out of the will. I told her my ex was no longer my problem, and if she really was homeless then she could go live with that guy she destroyed our 13-year relationship for. Am I the a-hole for ditching this cheater?
My fiancé of 7 years is my best friend. I'm betraying him for a stranger on the internet. I was a chubby girl most of my life, with my highest weight being 215. And my fiancé, Tim, was heavy too, even though our relationship felt devoid of passion. He was my best friend and so we lived together for 5 years. It was more like two roommates living together than a couple. I don't think Tim was ever intimately attracted to me. Every time I would try to engage in any sort of romantic activity, I was rejected. It hurt. Another problem I had was Tim would threaten to unalive himself if I expressed the idea of breaking up. He would tell me he would blow his brains out. So I stayed with him, believing him. I started losing weight and getting attention from men, something I never had. So it was exciting for me. But nothing ever stood out to me. I used to stay up late and drink wine, paint and listen to podcasts while Tim was in the garage drinking beer. So I was alone much of the night. I decided one night I wanted to learn a language in my spare time. Spanish to be exact. So I researched options on how to learn and practice Spanish. I decided to download some language apps. I'm online chatting with many Spanish speakers, receiving a medium amount of messages. I remember scrolling through new messages and a name caught my eye. Muhammad, so I clicked it to a message of "Hey, how are you?" The profile picture was of a black-headed man wearing oversized sunglasses. I couldn't really tell what he looked like, but I could tell he wasn't ugly. Even though his language was Arabic, which I had no intention of learning. I wrote him back. A few hours later we started chatting back and forth. He was a Libyan living in Manhattan. His mother was a diplomat and he was a journalist. We decided to exchange WhatsApp IDs. He starts sending me photos of himself. Curly black hair, big brown eyes, caramel skin, muscular body with a six-pack. I was shocked at his beauty, But what shocked me more was he thought I was pretty. So we said goodbye for the night and I went to bed. I felt guilty talking to another man, one who could be catfishing me for all I knew. I just couldn't get him off my mind. So every day we would text and video chat all day long. I was starting to fall for this stranger on the internet. We had a connection and he gave me the attention I so desired. After months of talking, we decided that we loved each other even though we never met. I began to tell my co-workers that I loved a Muslim Arab named Muhammad and we are going to spend our lives together. Most rolled their eyes or attempted to talk me out of it. He is a terrorist. He wants a green card. He is not who he says he is. You are engaged to someone else, but none of them believed I would ever leave Tim and be with Muhammad. I was honest with Muhammad that I was with Tim. He knew my situation and we talked about what to do. We decided that I would leave Tim, then fly to New York to meet Muhammad. So I told people at work because I had to arrange to get the days off. One thing I didn't mention was Tim's brother James worked at the hospital I was employed at. Skip ahead a few weeks. I planned on leaving Tim a certain day while he was at work and I was off. So I woke up, texted him we need to talk. No response for the next few hours. I'm packing in. My phone rings and it's him crying. How could you leave me? I love you so much. My heart sank. He found out I had this speech. I planned out to give him to let him off gently. But I never expected him to find out another way. Please don't leave me. I'm coming home now. I love you so much. Please don't leave. I can't believe my brother heard you were leaving me. You weren't going to tell me, he said with tears in his eyes. Tim, we are like roommates. I'm miserable. I'm so sorry. I'm not happy. I'll never find someone like you. Sandra. I'm sorry. I'm leaving and that was officially one of the worst moments of my life. I was a cheater liar and I didn't have the guts to be honest. My boyfriend's entitled friend attacked me. I'm so done with my boyfriend's entitled friend. I, 22, have been dating my, 22, boyfriend for 5 years now. We've been living together in a small town, very close to where he grew up with his friend, 22. His friend Sarah has always been very vocal about how much she loves him, how she knows him so well, how she has even seen him naked as kids, how she is like his sister, etc., etc. They only see each other about once a month. She has been our house about 3 times. Something important about me: I was intimately assaulted a few months before dating my now boyfriend. This was something that impacted me and has ruined certain aspects of my life. The guy who did it is a well-known person around the area, which means that from time to time I run into him. This brings me so much anxiety, so much pain, and the only way to feel better is venting about it. Sarah was at my house one time. I started bawling about it and decided to trust her. Big mistake. I told her everything. She knew the guy actually tried to get with her before, and she acted so compassionate and kind in front of me. One day we were having some dinner as a group. It was my boyfriend, Sarah, and other people I didn't know. Sarah asked my boyfriend what he was planning to do after uni. My boyfriend: I'm not sure yet. Me: why not a master's degree? Sarah: got up. Stop pressuring him. He's worked so hard all his life, give him a goddamn break and let him decide what to do. She said it in such an aggressive tone. Mind you, I was just suggesting. I've never told my boyfriend he had to do something. He grabbed my hand and squeezed it, telling me it was all right and that he didn't think I was forcing him to do something. Then, Sarah asked what his future plans were for housing. I mentioned my family has a house in the southern part of the country, maybe a 5-hour drive, and that we were planning on moving there in the future. I kid you not, these were her exact words. Sarah: hell no. He isn't moving to the south. He's staying here. And he better not go farther away than, insert nearest city. I was a bit annoyed. Why was it when I recommended doing a master's I was forcing him to do something, yet she was prohibiting him from moving? Yet I was the controlling one? Anyways. Sarah then started talking about ex-boyfriends, and said she didn't mind if any of her friends got with her exes. I mentioned something to her like, I'd warn the girl first. I don't want anyone to suffer what I suffered. Sarah blew up. She was red in the face. These were her words: Sarah, how effing dare you throw yourself in the middle of a relationship? Are you that possessive that you can't let your ex be happy? You're not over your ex and I can tell. You cried about him the other day. You're hurting boyfriend by not telling him the truth. She was accusing me of all these things. And then the cherry on top. Sarah, boyfriend hasn't been the same since you two are together. He's so quiet. He hasn't talked to me all day. You two keep showing affection in front of us all the effing time. I've seen him naked as a kid and I know him so well. You're no good for him. She was annoyed at us holding hands and hugging each other in front of her. I started crying over her tone and her accusations. I'm very sensitive. And then she said something that made me bawl even harder. Sarah, I'm so sure you lied about your assault. If it were actually true, you would have gone to the police. What did he do to you exactly? I blew up and told her in detail what he did to me in front of others. I was so embarrassed when I realized I told a bunch of strangers something so personal. Sarah, you're such an effing manipulator. Remember when I met you were crying over your weight? Sarah kept throwing things that made no sense, anything she could she was throwing it into my face. She has an ed, and she threw my own self-esteem issues into my face. I wasn't expecting my boyfriend to say anything. Not only is he incredibly bad at confrontation due to years of abuse from his family, he's terrified of her. She has been like a sister, yeah, but is that big sister who bullied him as well. Anyways, we're moving to the south in a few months.